The Allen Heath DLive S7000. This is definitely not going to be a quick review. We're no longer talking about entry-level mixers here. The DLive S7000 is Allen Heath's flagship professional control surface. Built for serious live production, touring, broadcast, houses of worship, and large-scale events. There is a lot to cover here, so let's get to it. Before we start, I want to clarify how this system is built. The S7000 is the control surface, and in our setup, it is paired with a DM64 MixRack. The S7000 itself does not perform the audio processing or mixing. That happens inside the DM64. In fact, you can run and mix the DM64 without the S7000 surface at all by using the DLive Director software. That said, working from a proper control surface is obviously much faster and more practical, especially in a live environment. Starting from behind the surface, lots of I/O. Plugging in is very simple. The S7000 takes one standard IEC C13 power cable to run, and you have the ability to leverage a redundant power supply unit. First, we have 8 analog XLR inputs along with 8 XLR outputs. The S7000 also include 2 AES-3 inputs and 3 AES-3 outputs. These XLR connections are AES-3 digital audio I/O. Each AES connection carries 2 channels of digital audio over 1 XLR cable. So the S7000 gives us up to 4 channels of AES input and 6 channels of AES output. Next to the PSU, we have a VGA output, so you can leverage an additional control monitor display. In our case, we keep our RTA number 2 handy. Moving on, we have the GigaAce A and B connections. These are the main digital links between the S7000 surface and the DM MixRack. They carry both multi-channel audio and control data over CAT cable, and the second port can be used for redundancy. You have 2 switch Ethernet connections for getting the S7000 connected to your network. The BNC word clock connection allows the DLive system to synchronize its digital audio clock with other professional audio equipment. It carries synchronization timing, not audio. Next, we have 2 DX expansion ports. These DX5 and DX6 labeled EtherCon connections are dedicated Allen and Heath DX expansion ports. They let you connect compatible remote stage boxes and add additional inputs and outputs to the DLive system over CAT cable. They're not standard Ethernet network ports. Lastly, we have 2 expansions. I/O ports 4 and 5 are expansion card slots. Depending on the card installed, they can add network formats such as Dante, MADI, or Waves, giving the S7000 up to 128 channels of digital audio in and out per slot. Moving to the front of the console, you can immediately tell there is a lot going on, but surprisingly, the workspace doesn't feel crowded at all. After spending a day with the S7000, if you know your fundamentals, you start to appreciate how well organized and thoughtfully structured the control surface really is. Starting with the left-hand screen, this is where most of your channel processing controls live. The first tab on top is the View tab, which is a channel bank view, which gives you a visual representation of the 12 channels currently assigned to that fader bank and layer. Selecting a channel is as simple as pressing its green SEL button. Once selected, the screen immediately updates to display that channel's processing controls while the bank view continues to show you where that channel sits within the current 12-channel layer. This makes it very easy to see which channel you're working on without losing track of the rest of your bank. The Overview tab gives you a snapshot of the major processing stages available on the channel you currently have selected. At a glance, you can see the preamp, high and low pass filter, gate, insert A and B, parametric EQ, compressor, and delay without having to open each section individually. The preamp tab gives you detailed control and status information for the currently selected channel's input stage. From there, you can adjust the gain and trim, engage the padding, and enable 48-volt phantom power when needed. If you are using compatible network RF receivers that can communicate with the DLive MixRack, this section can also display useful wireless microphone status information such as RF-related monitoring data. Filter tab allows you to enable and adjust the high and low pass filters. The Gate tab allows you to enable the gate and fine-tune its parameters for the currently selected channel. Here you can adjust attack, hold, release, threshold, and depth. Each parameter can be adjusted directly on the touchscreen or by using the large rotary encoder below the screen, below the View button. The Insert A and Insert B tabs allow you to insert processors or effects from the DLive FX rack directly into the selected channel signal path. Once inserted, you can access and adjust those parameters right from the channel's processing screen without having to leave the channel and navigate back to the main FX rack. The PEQ or parametric equalizer gives you the detailed control over the tone of the selected channel. You can use the touchscreen to drag each EQ band to the frequency and gain you want and pinch to adjust the Q or bandwidth. If you prefer physical controls like I do, you can also use the rotary encoder below the screen to adjust the selected EQ band. The DLive PEQ gives you 4 fully adjustable controls, giving you plenty of controls to shape the channel and get it sounding the way you want. Moving right along to the compressor tab, this is where you can fine-tune the dynamics of the currently selected channel. From here, you can adjust the attack, release, ratio, threshold, compressor gain to control how aggressively the signal is compressed and how the channel behaves dynamically. Lastly, we have the delay tab. From here, you can apply and fine-tune an individual delay to the currently selected channel whenever needed. And that pretty much covers the channel processing section. One thing I really like about this surface is that Allen Heath gives you multiple ways to make the same adjustment. You have shortcut controls along both the left and right sides of the screens, and many of the parameters can also be adjusted using the corresponding rotary encoders beside the displays. The flexibility is really welcomed, especially in a live environment, because you're not forced to rely on just one method of control. One more feature worth pointing out is the library or lib function. You're not limited to the default Allen Heath compressor, preamp, or EQ models. The DLive includes a number of alternative processing models that you can load to give a channel a different character or response. For example, on my bass guitar channel, I am not using the default compressor. I'm using the 16T compressor limiter, which to my ears gives the bass a more musical and controlled character. The ability to choose different processing models is a really nice feature because it lets you tailor the channel to the source instead of using the exact same processing on everything. Moving on to the right-hand touchscreen, this display works in conjunction with a vertical row of buttons located along its right side. I'm going to give you a general overview of what each of these buttons give you access to. but I'm not going to dive into every individual tab or submenu. The DLive ecosystem is extremely feature-rich, and covering every function in detail would turn this review into a several-hour video. The first button is Meters, which brings up a comprehensive metering overview of the system. The first tab gives you level meters for all your input channels, while the FX tab provides metering for the effects section. There are also several additional tabs covering other areas of the console. One feature I really like is that you don't need to see all of the information at once. You can create up to 4 custom meter views, allowing you to monitor only the signals that matter to you and reduce screen clutter. Lastly, you also have access to RTA1 and RTA2, giving you real-time frequency analysis when needed. In our setup, we keep RTA number 2 displayed permanently on the third external VGA monitor, which gives the engineer a dedicated spectrum view while mixing. Next is the effects button. Again, to keep it short, this opens the DLive's internal effects rack, where you can load up to 16 effects processor at a time. You can choose from the available effects and assign each one to its own rack slot, then route the effects wherever it's needed in your mix. Next is the I/O button, which opens up the DLive's I/O patching panel. This is where you assign your available physical and digital inputs to the console processing channels, and where you route your mix outputs to the available output sockets and expansion I/O. This is one area where experience really matters, because patching is something you generally do not want to change casually during a live production. It is very easy to select the wrong socket or channel and accidentally reroute something critical. For that reason, I personally prefer using the DLive Director app on the PC when making patching changes. The larger computer screen makes it easier to see the routing clearly and reduces the chance of making a mistake. Next is the Scenes button, which opens the DLive Scene Management window. This is actually the screen that we keep on most of the time on the right hand display, because during the typical program we may work through anywhere from 8 to 20 different scenes. As you can see, we have quite a few scenes programmed, and they are quite an important part of running a smooth program, especially when you're dealing with choirs, multiple bands, and different vocalists sharing the same microphones. Scenes let us recall a large group of settings almost instantly, which makes transitions much faster and more consistent. Next is the ganging button. This is where you can link 2 or more channels together so that a change made to one channel can affect the entire group. You can keep it simple and gang only the faders, so moving one fader moves the other, or you can link additional processing such as trim, filters, gates, PEQ, compressor, and more. This becomes extremely useful when you're working with a large group of similar sources. For example, if you have 20 choir microphones, you can gang selected parameters so you don't have to make the same adjustment 20 separate times. Next is the MixRack section. This is where you handle a lot of the system level configuration for the DLive. During the initial setup, this is where you define things like how many aux mixes, groups, matrices, and other buses you want available in your mixer configuration. This is definitely not something you want to change during a live program, because applying a new mixer configuration requires the system to reconfigure and temporarily interrupt operation. This section also gives you access to settings for talkback, mute group, the signal generator, stereo input configuration, network settings, and quite a bit more. There's a lot packed into this menu, so this is really more of a system configuration area than something you constantly adjust while mixing. And we have the surface button. The first tab is probably my favorite because this is where you can completely customize the layout of the console. You're not locked into having channel 1, fader 1, channel 2 on fader 2, and so on. You're not locked into having channel 1 on fader 1, channel 2 on fader 2, and so on. Any channel can be placed on any fader in whatever order makes the most sense for your workflow. The next tab is soft keys, where you can customize shortcuts for the 23 soft keys located on the right side of the S7000 surface. You can assign these buttons to frequently used functions so they're always one press away. There are plenty of additional tabs under the Surface menu, but like I mentioned earlier, I'm keeping this review focused on the major features rather than diving into every possible option. Moving on to the utility button, there are two main areas I want to point out. First is the utility tab, where you can view system information and logs, which is useful when troubleshooting errors and checking the health of the system. More importantly, you have the show manager. This is where you can save an entire DLive show configuration and load a different one when needed. That becomes especially useful if you're touring with the console or using the same DLive system in different venues, because each show can be built around completely different set of routing, scenes, surface layouts, and system requirements. This is also where you can back up your shows and configurations to a USB drive, which is something I definitely recommend doing. Next is the routing button. This is where you control where a selected channel is being sent within the console. From here, you can assign channels to DCAs, choose whether sends operate pre-fader or post-fader, and enable or disable a channel's send to a particular mix or output. In other words, this is where you decide where the signal goes and how it gets there. Now that we covered these buttons, the last feature on the right hand screen that I really appreciate is the row of rotary encoders corresponding to the shortcuts displayed along the right edge of the touchscreen. These can be customized to give you fast access to the parameters you use the most. For example, I've created several shortcuts that let me quickly adjust the selected channels and send levels to different aux outputs and effects without having to dig through additional menus. It is a small feature, but in a live environment where speed matters, it makes the Surface feel much faster and more personalized. Now let's talk about the faders. Full disclosure, this is a 5-year-old S7000 Surface, and we had all 3 fader banks replaced about 2 months ago. The original faders had started sticking occasionally, but these replacements are extremely responsive and smooth. If you have an older S7000 suffering from persistent, stuck, or unreliable faders, I would recommend having them inspected and replaced through an authorized Allen Heath service provider rather than trying to work around the problem. Looking at the fader strips themselves, everything is laid out very clearly. You have a well-marked 0 dB unity position, decibel increments along the fader scale, and a customizable scribble strip showing the channel name, color, and other information. By the way, these little buttons enable you to have different information displayed on the scribble strip. Moving on, DLive lets you assign virtually any input or mix to any fader bank or layer, so the Surface can be completely customized around your workflow. Each strip also gives you mute, SEL, mix, and PAFL controls. Mute obviously mutes the channel. SEL brings that channel into the processing section so you can work on it. while PAFL lets you monitor that signal through the console's PAFL monitoring system. Between the scribble strip and mute button, you have a rotary encoder for each fader. This is a multi-function rotary encoder designed to allow you to adjust pan and gain, as well as the signal sends to 4 additional customizable auxiliary channels. In our case, we assign these to stage monitors. But the mix button is where the DLive workflow gets really interesting. By default, you're normally working with your main left and right mix. So the input faders are controlling how much of the channel goes into your front of house mix. But let's say I want to build an auxiliary monitor mix. I can press the mix button on the aux master and immediately the input faders become the send levels going to the aux. Now I can build that monitor mix directly from the faders in front of me. The really clever part of that is DLive lets you approach this from either direction. I can select an aux or FX mix and use all the input faders to decide how much of every channel goes into that mix. Or I can press the mix button on a single input channel, and now the master section shows me that channels sent to the different aux and FX mixes. So I can work many inputs into one mix or one input into many mixes. That flexibility is brilliant, especially when you're moving quickly during a live production. Another really cool feature is the copy and paste function. Let's say you have 20 similar channels and you're already dialed in the EQ, especially how you want it on one of the channels. Instead of rebuilding that EQ manually on every channel, you can simply copy it. Hold the copy button, touch the EQ section of the touchscreen, then release the copy. Select the destination channel, hold paste, touch the EQ section again, and the settings are transferred. You can repeat that process across the remaining channel, which can save a huge amount of time when you're working with a large group of similar sources. Just make sure you're copying only the processing block you actually want, because copying the wrong section can override settings you intended to keep. A few other smaller but really useful features are worth pointing out. First, you have the scene selection shortcut buttons, which make it easier to step forward or backward through your scenes. If you build a custom cue list like I do when I mix, these buttons make navigating throughout a program much faster and more organized. Right above that is the home button, and next to it you have the talk button for your assigned talkback microphone. The assign button lets you choose exactly where the talkback signal is being sent. Above that you have the PAFL clear button, which is extremely handy if you forgot that you've soloed. Instead of hunting through the console to find the active PAFL, one press clears it. And finally, you have the main metering section, clear, accurate, and easy to read. So in conclusion, what do I think about the Allen Heath S7000 surface? This is a flagship control surface for a reason. It is incredibly flexible, highly customizable, and designed around real-world live production workflow. Once you understand how Allen Heath organizes the system, the surface becomes extremely fast to operate, and having multiple ways to accomplish the same task is one of its biggest strengths. The S7000 is not a console you fully learn in a day. There is a lot under the hood, and even after working with it for a long time, you will probably continue discovering new ways to improve your workflow. What I appreciate most of it is that despite how feature-rich it is, the surface never feels unnecessarily complicated. You can keep things simple when you need to, or dive extremely deep when the production demands it. Paired with the DM64 MixRack, this system gives you the processing power, I/O capacity, redundancy, customization, and reliability needed for the serious live production. Is it overkill for a small venue? Absolutely. But for large productions, broadcast, churches, touring, or any environment where you need a lot of channels and fast control, the S7000, it's the excellent surface to work on. With that being said, I hope you found this review useful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.